The crystal chandelier cast warm light over the mahogany dining table as our family gathered for Christmas dinner. The same table where I'd sat for 32 years, watching my father carve the turkey with the precision of a surgeon and the authority of a king. Tonight felt different though. There was an electricity in the air, a tension that made my mother fidget with her pearl necklace and my brothers exchange meaningful glances. I adjusted my simple black sweater and took another bite of mashed potatoes, savoring the familiar taste of my mother's cooking. My phone buzzed silently in my purse, but I ignored it. Whatever Forbes needed could wait until after dinner. "Sarah," my father began, setting down his carving knife with a ceremonial flourish. "There's something important we need to discuss as a family." My two brothers, Michael and David, straightened in their chairs. Michael's wife Jennifer looked eager, while David's spouse Patricia barely concealed a smirk. Their children, my nephews Jake and Tommy, both in college, looked up from their phones with mild interest. "Of course, Dad," I said softly, reaching for my water glass. "What's on your mind?" My father cleared his throat, the way he always did before making what he considered momentous announcements. "I've been working with the estate attorney finalizing my will. Your mother and I have made some decisions about the inheritance." The room fell silent except for the soft crackling of the fireplace in the adjacent living room. I continued eating, though I could feel everyone's eyes on me. "The business, the properties, the investments, they'll be divided between Michael and David," my father declared, his voice carrying the weight of a judge pronouncing sentence. "They've proven themselves capable of handling such responsibility." I nodded slowly, cutting another piece of turkey. "I understand." My mother leaned forward, her voice taking on that particular tone she used when she thought she was being helpful. "Sarah, honey, it's not that we don't love you. It's just that you've always been different. Your little computer job, living in that tiny apartment downtown. You've never shown interest in real business." Michael adjusted his designer tie and cleared his throat. "Dad's right, Sarah. The construction company needs someone who understands contracts, negotiations, real estate development. Jennifer and I have been working closely with Dad for years now. And the restaurant chain requires hands-on management," David added, his arm draped possessively around Patricia's shoulders. "Someone who can handle vendors, staff multiple locations. It's not really your wheelhouse." I took a sip of wine, a 1998 Bordeaux that cost more than most people's monthly rent, though my family had no idea I was the one who'd quietly added it to their collection last month. "You're absolutely right," I said calmly. "I wouldn't know the first thing about running multiple businesses." My father's expression softened slightly, clearly relieved by my acceptance. "I'm glad you understand, sweetheart. This doesn't mean we don't value you. There will be a small trust fund, enough to ensure you're comfortable. Maybe $50,000. Jennifer practically glowed with satisfaction. "It's really for the best, Sarah. Michael and I have been planning expansions, new locations. We'll put the inheritance to good use. We're thinking of buying that new development downtown," Patricia chimed in. "The one with the luxury condos overlooking the harbor. David says it's a gold mine." I nearly choked on my wine. Harbor View Residences, the development I'd financed and owned through my investment firm. The same development that had generated over $30 million in profits last quarter. "That sounds like a wonderful investment," I managed, keeping my voice steady. Young Jake, my nephew, looked up from his phone with confusion. "Wait, isn't that the building where Aunt Sarah's company dash?" "Sarah doesn't have a company, honey," Michael interrupted quickly. "She works for someone else's computer business." I smiled at Jake. "That's right. I just do coding work for other people." My phone buzzed again, more insistently this time. I could see my assistant Emma's name on the screen through my purse. Probably something about the merger with the European tech firm, or maybe the acquisition of the pharmaceutical company had gone through. Either way, it could wait. My father raised his wine glass. "To family and to ensuring the business legacy continues with those best equipped to handle it." Everyone raised their glasses except me. I was still eating, focused on my plate. "Sarah," my mother prompted. "The toast." "Oh, sorry." I lifted my glass half-heartedly. "To family." As we drank, David leaned back in his chair with satisfaction. "You know, Sarah, maybe this will motivate you to find a husband, settle down. A woman your age shouldn't be living alone in some cramped apartment, working all hours on computers." "David," my mother scolded gently, though she was clearly thinking the same thing. "No, he's right," I said, cutting another piece of turkey. 32 is getting up there. I should probably think about my future more seriously." My phone buzzed a third time. Emma was persistent, it had to be important. But I'd learned long ago that family dinners were sacred in the Thompson household. Nothing interrupted Dad's pronouncements. Michael's son Tommy, 19 and home from his sophomore year at Harvard, was scrolling through his phone when he suddenly froze. His eyes widened and he looked from his screen to me and back again. He said slowly. Aunt Sarah. Yes, sweetheart. I just got a news alert. Forbes just published their updated billionaire list for this year. The room continued its chatter, but I noticed Tommy staring at his phone with increasing bewilderment. That's nice, honey, Jennifer said absently, cutting her son's turkey into smaller pieces. But Tommy wasn't listening. He was reading something on his screen, his face growing paler by the second. Aunt Sarah, he said again, his voice cracking slightly. There's someone on this list with your name. The conversation began to slow as people noticed Tommy's strange behavior. What do you mean, sweetie? My mother asked. Tommy held up his phone, his hand trembling slightly. Sarah Thompson. Number 47 on the Forbes billionaire list. Net worth. He paused, swallowing hard. $3.8 billion. The room went completely silent. David laughed nervously. That's obviously a different Sarah Thompson. Common name. But Tommy was staring directly at me now. The article says she's the founder and CEO of Quantum Dynamics, the AI company that just acquired MedTech Industries. It says she's 32 years old, from our city, and... He looked at the photo on his screen, then at me. And she looks exactly like Aunt Sarah. Every fork stopped moving. Every glass froze halfway to lips. The only sound was the continued crackling of the fireplace. My father's face had gone ashen. That's impossible. I took another bite of turkey. Is it? Michael grabbed Tommy's phone, his hands shaking as he read. His wife leaned over his shoulder, her mouth falling open. The photo. Jennifer whispered. It's definitely her. My mother was staring at me like she'd never seen me before. Sarah? Is this some kind of joke? I set down my fork and wiped my mouth with the linen napkin. What would you like to know? David snatched the phone from Michael, reading frantically. It says here that Quantum Dynamics was founded 8 years ago in a small downtown apartment. The CEO started with just a laptop and a few $1,000s in savings. My apartment, I said simply. The room erupted. This can't be real, my father stammered. You work for someone else. You've never mentioned owning a company. You never asked. Michael was scrolling through more articles now, his face growing more shocked by the second. Sarah, there are dozens of articles here. Forbes, Fortune, Wall Street Journal. They're all about you. About your company. It says here, Patricia read over his shoulder, that Quantum Dynamics revolutionized artificial intelligence in healthcare, created the most advanced diagnostic systems in the world, and just acquired 3 major pharmaceutical companies. I nodded. That sounds right. My father leaned forward, his commanding presence now uncertain. Why didn't you tell us? When would I have told you? At last year's Christmas dinner when David explained to me how real business works? Or maybe at Michael's birthday party when Jennifer suggested I find a nice man to take care of me because I clearly couldn't take care of myself. The silence stretched uncomfortably. Tommy was still reading, his voice filled with awe. Aunt Sarah, it says here that you personally donated $50 million to children's hospitals last year. And that you're building a new cancer research center. The Morrison Center, I confirmed. It'll be finished next spring. My mother's pearl necklace was getting a workout now. But you live in that tiny apartment. You drive that old Honda. I like my apartment. It's where I built the company. And the Honda runs fine. Michael set the phone down with shaking hands. Sarah, if this is true, if you're really worth almost $4 billion, then what? I asked gently. The question hung in the air like smoke. My father, who had spent the last hour explaining why I wasn't worthy of inheriting his mid-sized construction company and small chain of family restaurants, was now staring at someone whose personal wealth exceeded his business empire by a factor of roughly 1,000. David cleared his throat. I mean, we had no way of knowing. Didn't you? I asked. Did you ever wonder how I could afford to live downtown without roommates on what you assumed was a secretary's salary? Did you question why I never seemed stressed about money, never asked the family for help? Jennifer's face was red now. You let us think you were struggling. I never said I was struggling. You assumed I was struggling because I didn't drive a luxury car or wear designer clothes to family dinners. My father was reading something on his own phone now. Sarah, there's an article here from last month. It says Quantum Dynamics just acquired Thompson Industries. The room went dead silent again. Thompson Industries? My mother whispered. I took a sip of wine. A small construction and restaurant group. I thought the name was fitting. Michael's face went white. You bought Dad's companies? Technically, my investment firm bought them. You were having cash flow problems, needed capital for expansion. I provided it. My father's voice was barely a whisper. You've been our silent partner for 6 months. Silent investor, I corrected. I prefer to stay in the background. David was frantically scrolling through more articles. Sarah, there are photos here of you at charity galas, business summits, meeting with world leaders. How did we never see any of this? I use my middle name professionally, Sarah Elizabeth Thompson. And I don't really attend local social events. Patricia looked confused. But why didn't you ever say anything? Why let us think? Think what? That I was a failure? That I needed your guidance and support? That I was the family disappointment? The words landed like physical blows around the table. My nephew Jake, who had been quietly reading more articles, looked up with something approaching reverence. Aunt Sarah, this article says you're one of the youngest self-made billionaires in history. And that you built your company while working full-time jobs to support yourself through college. I worked at a coffee shop and did freelance coding, I confirmed. My mother was crying now, though I wasn't sure if it was from shock, embarrassment, or something else entirely. Sarah, honey, we had no idea. I know. My father set down his phone with trembling hands. The inheritance discussion was perfectly reasonable, I finished. You're dividing your assets between the children you believe are best equipped to handle them. That makes sense. Michael looked like he might be sick. But we just told you that you're not getting anything. We just explained to you why you don't deserve. You explained your reasoning and I agreed with it. I wouldn't know how to run a construction company or a restaurant chain. But you already own them, David pointed out weakly. Through a management company. I write checks and attend quarterly board meetings. That's very different from day-to-day operations. The table had grown cold, the carefully prepared Christmas dinner forgotten as everyone grappled with this new reality. Jennifer's voice was small when she finally spoke. Sarah, when we were talking about buying those condos downtown. Harborview Residences. Yes, I heard. Do you own them? Yes. Developed them, actually. Meridian Development Group is another one of my companies. The silence that followed was deafening. Tommy broke it by reading from yet another article. It says here that you're planning to revolutionize urban development with sustainable, affordable housing projects. And that you've already broken ground on 4 new developments across the city. 5 actually. The 5th one was just approved yesterday. My father looked around the table at his family, then back at me. Sarah, I owe you an apology. For what? For everything. For underestimating you. For dismissing your work. For assuming. Dad, I said gently, you don't owe me anything. You made decisions based on the information you had. I never corrected your assumptions. Michael leaned forward desperately. But why? Why didn't you tell us? I considered the question while finishing my wine. Honestly, because I liked having one place where I could just be Sarah. Where I wasn't the CEO or the founder or the billionaire. Where I was just your daughter, your sister, your aunt. Where people loved me for who I was, not what I'd accomplished. The words hit the table like a hammer. Patricia's voice was barely audible. But we don't. Love me? I asked softly. I know. That's been clear for a while now. My mother was sobbing openly now. That's not true, Sarah. We love you so much. You love the idea of me. The daughter who needs guidance, who you can feel superior to, who makes you feel better about your own children's successes. You don't love the real me. David was shaking his head frantically. That's not fair. You hid who you really are. I hid what I do for a living. Who I am hasn't changed. I'm still the same person who helped you study for your business degree, David. The same person who taught Michael how to code when he was thinking about career changes. The same person who babysat your children, who remembered everyone's birthdays, who never missed a family event. The truth of it settled over the room like a heavy blanket. My phone buzzed again and this time I pulled it out. Emma's message was urgent. European merger approved. Need your signature by midnight for morning announcement. Also, pharmaceutical acquisition complete, $2.3 billion transfer confirmed. I typed back quickly, send documents to my apartment. I'll sign tonight. When I looked up, everyone was staring at me. Work? My father asked hesitantly. Just closing a couple of acquisitions. Nothing that can't wait until after dessert. Jennifer looked like she was in shock. A couple of acquisitions. Like it's buying groceries. Different scale, same principle, I said with a small smile. Tommy was still reading articles, completely fascinated. Aunt Sarah, this interview from last year. You said your biggest regret was not spending more time with family. But we never made time for you. You made time for the version of me you were comfortable with. My father stood up abruptly, beginning to pace. Sarah, the things we said tonight, the way we talked about your future, your life choices, were based on your understanding of my situation. I don't blame you for that. But we do, Michael said quietly. We blame ourselves. I looked around the table at my family, really looked at them. My father, the man who had built a successful business from nothing but had never thought to ask me about mine. My mother, who had worried about my financial security while I was building a fortune. My brothers, who had pitted my simple lifestyle while I was revolutionizing entire industries. I have a proposition, I said finally. Everyone leaned forward. We finish dinner. We have dessert. We exchange gifts like we always do. And then we start over. Start over, my mother asked. You learn who I really am, and I learn who you really are when you're not trying to take care of your poor, struggling daughter. My father sat back down heavily. Sarah, I don't know how do we even begin to make this right? You don't need to make anything right. You need to decide if you want a relationship with me, the real me, or if you preferred the version you thought you knew. The room was quiet for a long moment. Finally, Jake spoke up. Aunt Sarah. Yes. Can I ask you about the AI stuff? I'm majoring in computer science and the diagnostic systems you developed. They're like revolutionary. I smiled, the first genuine smile I'd worn all evening. I'd love to talk about that with you. And Tommy added shyly, maybe you could tell us about the Cancer Research Center? I'm thinking about pre-med and what you're doing sounds incredible. Absolutely. My father looked at me with something that might have been respect. Sarah, would you be willing to tell us about your work? Really tell us. Are you sure? Might take a while. 8 years of building a company is a lot of ground to cover. We have time, my mother said quickly. All the time in the world. I nodded slowly. Hey. But first let's finish this excellent dinner. And Dad. Yes. That inheritance discussion. I meant what I said. Michael and David should get the businesses. They know them, they understand them, they've worked in them. That's exactly how it should be. David looked confused. But you could buy and sell Dad's companies 100 times over. Exactly. Which is why I don't need them. You do. The inheritance should go to the people who will value it most. My father's eyes filled with tears. Sarah. Dad, you built something wonderful. You employed people, you provided for your family, you created value in the world. I'm proud to be your daughter. Even after tonight? After what we said. Especially after tonight. Because now we can finally be honest with each other. I picked up my fork and took another bite of turkey. Now, who wants to hear about the time I accidentally revolutionized medical diagnostics while trying to build a better scheduling app? And for the first time in years, my family really listened to what I had to say. The Forbes list had changed everything and nothing. I was still Sarah Thompson, the girl who loved her family despite their flaws. But now, finally, they had the chance to love me back, all of me. The conversation that followed lasted until well past midnight, filled with questions, laughter, tears, and the tentative first steps toward building something we'd never had before. A relationship based on truth. As I drove home to my small downtown apartment in my reliable Honda, I smiled to myself. Tomorrow I'd wake up and continue changing the world. But tonight I'd simply enjoyed being part of a family that finally knew who I really was. And that, I thought as I pulled into my parking space, was worth more than any Forbes list ranking could ever measure.